Hi, this is part 2 of the video on how to enable 802.1x wireless or wired networking to Mac OS systems using your Windows infrastructure with Centrify. And in the previous video we talked about the checklist for items that relate to PKI, and we verified that everything is kosher from a PKI perspective. Now there's another component to this puzzle, which is we need to have a network policy service, a radio server going, and certain connection request policies and network policies. So in my lab, basically what I've done is in this Windows Server 2012 R2, I've installed or I've enabled the network policy service. And what does it do? It becomes basically a Radius server. So Radius is a protocol that is used for traditionally for dial-up connections, but it has evolved and is very useful. And it's used to establish the initial mechanisms for authentication between a network device and an enterprise directory. TACAX is actually the next generation of Radius. But in here, basically, what we need to make sure is that we have our Radius clients. In this video, I'm gonna basically set up both Ethernet and 802.1x Wi-Fi. So we needed to make sure that that the host is actually reachable on the network. So in my network, I basically have this access point AP machine that I'm able to connect to, and I've set up basically what is called a shared secret that is used to encrypt. So this TP-Link device, I actually have it right here, and when it comes to wireless, I've set up the wireless security to use this shared secret right here, right? So very simple stuff. I've set up to use WPA2 with encryption using AES. This is the IP address of my app1 server and the port. So everything is by default. Same thing with my Cisco router right here, which logged off. So you have the ability to set up that as well. The next thing we need to set up is what are called connection request policies. And don't worry about it. Microsoft does a good job and walks you through a wizard to set those things. So, how is the connection going to be requested? This is basically setting up how that's going to happen. So in my particular case, the conditions are this is going to be an 802.1x port. In this case, either wireless or wired. And the authentication for this request is going to be happening through a certificate. So this is going to be either the local computer identity. Finally, what I need to make sure is that the policy itself, what is it? Does it allow? Does it allow deny or grants access? In this case, it does grant access. It's very simple. The policy is enabled. It will grant access, right? Nothing fancy here. The conditions are very simple. That is an 802.1x, and the authentication is going to use a smart card or other certificate. Notice that there is a mutual authentication between the service or the server and the workstation. That's why the certificates are really important. And notice the CA. This is the certificate that my radio server is going to use, and this is the CA. Again, going back to that PKI that we have. Very simple. You can always add additional conditions here. Like, for example, maybe you want to add, that the user or workstations are part of a particular set of, Windows groups. For example, I do have a Mac 802.1x group that all my workstations belong to. But let's just keep things simple. We just want to make sure this works. And then finally, you have another additional settings here. In our case, we're just going to be using certificates, so we're fine. Okay. So from a network policy perspective, we needed to make sure that the radius clients and servers are properly set up, that there's a connection request policy with the proper conditions and settings, and that the policy is set to allow, and that obviously that the client meets the conditions. But in this case, we didn't do anything crazy, so our client is going to meet the conditions. In the next video, we're going to basically enable that Mac OS policy and test it. Very simple.